Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A on November 13th, 2020. It's actually Friday the 13th today. Probably won't see this until like maybe Sunday, probably before I can get it up. But nonetheless, it is Friday the 13th right now. And notice too, my face is getting thinner. I don't know if anyone notices that. In a cleanup phase right now, so we're a little bit less watery. My face is not quite as marshmallowy for anyone that cares. All right, so let's see. All right, first one. What is your typical approach to fixing weaknesses in the off season for competitors? Do you see trends in why people lag certain body parts? Okay. So there's going to be a few things, main reasons they might. Genetics, obviously, how the actual attachments, the way the muscle bellies and stuff look can be very genetic. So, the body part might not be weak per se in terms of strength, but it might be weak in terms of the way that it looks, which can obviously be genetic. And then obviously genetics can somewhat determine how it responds to stimulus, right? So first off, activation is always key. So a lot of times we have these lagging body parts. There is lack of activation, and that can be because you just simply don't know how to activate it very well, or you have other body parts that are compensating, right? So you have other things that are also involved in whatever movements you're doing, and they're really doing the majority of the work. So the weak body part is not being prioritized. So you could isolate that more to the best of your ability. That's not always entirely possible depending on what body part it is, but activation first, right? So that's going to be a huge part of it. Without that, I mean, you're not really going to be able to target the body part much at all anyhow. Secondly, beyond the genetic component, which we really can't control, think about different types of stimulus. What does it respond to? So you may have body parts that respond to lower volume, some for higher volume. That's really only something that you're going to be able to learn through experience, to be completely honest. Like I have clients, for example, that are more seasoned, that they train more low to moderate volume, working up, progressing to top set, that type of training for almost their entire body, except for like one or two body parts where they'll train with a little bit more volume, and that's literally just how that body part responds. That, unfortunately, we can really only learn through experience and some trial and error. But the last thing, and I think is very important, I would say, is probably second behind the activation part, is recovery. So we have a finite amount of resources for recovery we put into training. So let's say we're using 100% of those resources, pretty close, right? We want to probably push a larger percentage of those resources towards that weak body part. So when we talk about higher frequency, that's one of the things that we might be doing, higher frequency for that body part. But when you do that, you can't just keep everything the same and add a bunch more for something else if you're already close to capacity. You might actually need to do a little bit less for the other body parts and prioritize this body part. So potentially do a specialization phase where you're doing, let's say it's your delts. I'm just giving an example. Delts aren't a really big body part, but you would maybe push more of your total workload towards the delts and take some away from a stronger body part that will probably maintain with that with less volume or with less total workload or less stimulus, right? And now you're putting more of that recovery ability towards the delts, and then they can grow better. So that's something like specialization phase where you're kind of prioritizing like that can be helpful. Those are probably the main things. All right. What are your thoughts on the Carnivore Diet, Bodybuilding, Hypertrophy? One of the latest podcasts by Fuad had an interesting guest on that contradicts so much knowledge from individuals like yourself, which I had to get a follow-up on this because I wasn't exactly sure. I don't like to talk out of context because I don't know, I didn't listen to the podcast. I asked them what it contradicts, and they said, well, first off, they said carnivore diet. This carnivore diet has meat, muscle meat, organ meat, rice, and sweet potatoes, no veg, due to plant toxicity and lower fiber. Okay. And then they said, they dislike meats that are low fat, like chicken breast, tuna, etc., barely eating vegetables, avoiding nuts and seeds. All right. I think that's all of it. Okay, so as most of you know, I do advocate eating vegetables generally and fruits, okay? And sometimes nuts and diets, yeah. I don't know why they're not recommending this. I would like to know why before I'm not going to like bash this person. I really don't know what the reasoning is. Now, if my first thought would be their reasoning is because of some of these anti-nutrients that you might find in some of these foods that they're mentioning. Okay. That's really the first thing that probably pops into my head, and I may be off on that. But if that's the case, these inhibitory anti-nutrient type of foods, I guess, or byproducts of foods, or whatever you want to call them, I've actually seen at least enough convincing literature that would tell me that they're not problematic. And I've had people eating fruits and vegetables for long enough that I would say that they're not problematic. So if in fact that is why they're saying that, then I would probably respond with what I just said. I wish I had a really good article at one point. So if anyone's listening to this and is interested in that article, just let me know and I will link it in the actual, like, I'll just put it in the comments on the actual video, like on my YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, if anyone's interested in that. I know I can find the article. I'm sure I have it. Talks about some of those anti-nutrients, and it does a very good job summing up kind of what I'm saying. If there's something else that they're kind of insinuating at, I don't know what it is. I could maybe respond if I knew what it was. I don't really know what it is. Now, as far as the fatty meats go, I don't have any problem with people eating meats with fat. I generally don't advocate people just eat low-fat meat. We use a combination of a lot of things. Now, the problem is obviously like we have micronutrient restrictions, so we can only do so much in some cases. I would like to use higher fat meats like higher fat fish or grass-fed fattier cuts of beef and things in some people's diets, but I can't always do that. It's just not always feasible from a caloric standpoint. Organ meats are great, no issue there. I don't have any issues with a lot of the stuff that, pertaining to what they're saying. I just don't. I'm just gonna continue to add fruits and vegetables to nutrition plans. So if it's something other than what I'm talking about as far as like the anti-nutrients, plant toxicity type of thing, then by all means let me know. But I assume that's probably what they're talking about. And like I said, I can link that article. Okay. Someone says, bumping up their vitamin D3 amount, is it safe to do? Doesn't D3 put calcium in the blood? And an excessive amount would attach itself to arterial walls if inflammation is present in the arteries. They say they're bumping up their D3 because of COVID. So the easiest way to answer this is just use a use the amount of vitamin D3 that you need. Check your levels, like actually check your levels. A lot of people don't. A lot of people have chronically low vitamin D3. Even if they supplement, they still aren't getting enough. They probably need more supplementation. So check your levels. Look at vitamin D 25 hydroxy. That's the one that you really want to look at for serum levels. Make sure, I like to see people in like the 60 to 90 range, so upper end of the range. Yeah, if you're chronically high, this could potentially be an issue. I don't know how high you would have to get for that to really cause that imbalance where it's dumping calcium. I'm not sure if you would really note if there would be like anything problematic in like just over normal physiological range, or you'd have to be really, really high. But my advice would just be stay in that range. Stay within like the 60 to 90, maybe 50 to 90 is a pretty good range. I have lots of people that are in that range and supplement with a lot of vitamin D and have a calcium score of 0. So, take that for what you will. All right. Someone asks another flawed question. Wow, I hope I'm not getting a lot from this podcast. It's probably not going to like me after this. That's all right. All right. He says that HGH creates new muscle cells and therefore passes what your genetic would normally allow you to build size, while contradicting that is the one videos I've watched from the muscle mentors saying that no studies have ever been done that show muscle cell hyperplasia in humans, and the jury is still out on whether it's possible or not. I'm probably misinterpreting either side, but my question is basically what is your opinion on this topic, and does it actually create hyperplasia? So, not to my knowledge. I'm going to be completely in line with the Muscle Mentor guys, so Luke and Colum and those guys, because I've never seen anything convincing that would suggest that it does. I know that's kind of the myth that it does, but no. I've never seen any literature that would really suggest that. So, no. Nope. That's an easy one to answer. I know it's a long question, but it's an easy one to answer. Okay. Let's see. Does a DECA-only cycle with an HRT dose of test provide DHT provide any benefits in comparison with the test plus DECA cycle or test plus EQ cycle? Not mocking, sorry. I mean, what do you mean by benefit? I'm not sure exactly what benefit you are after. I mean, you're increasing androgens either way. You're gonna get the benefits that you're gonna get from increased androgens. How you respond to that's gonna be pretty individual, depend on setup and stuff. But no, I mean, I'm going to say it depends. That's really the best answer I can give you. All you're doing is asking me about different pairing. Really, a couple things. So yes, having some DHT, having a proper androgen to estrogen balance, these are really the things that we're looking at within a setup, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one way works for everyone. So I can't really answer that, sorry. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a direct or indirect benefit there for anybody. Again, kind of depends on the person, how they aromatize, how they feel with those different ADE ratios, age, experience, so on and so forth. So sorry, I can't give you much on that one. Next one, could you discuss initial post-show rebound, but specifically the first 4 weeks, day 1 to 30? Very interested in your approach to nutrition, training, supplementation. I'm competing my very first show in 3 weeks. No coach, don't want to blow it. Oh man, that is a lot of stuff. Honestly, not to plug, but I would just tell this person to hit me up for a consult if they want to really make sure they do shit right. Man, I no idea what you're doing, so I couldn't even begin to tell you what you would be best for you. It could be a slower approach. It could be a faster approach. It could be a matter of just trying to lower systemic stress initially to get a response. It could be a matter of you're not as stressed, so we can push a little bit further and get a nice rebound. I mean, there's like so many ways that it could potentially pan out. Man, I'm really sorry. I hate to not be able to answer these things, but they're just way too broad. And that's a ton of information, really, that you're looking for. So feel free, like I said, to just hit me up. You can find my email in my in the bio. This is a question from Instagram, so you can go to my Instagram bio. My email is in there. I think it's in the bio. Yes. Feel free to hit me up. We can schedule a consultation. I'd be more than happy to go over what you're actually doing in these you have 3 weeks away, so you have time. We could definitely make sure that you have some good information and a solid framework for your post show. Make sure nothing goes too far off the rails. So definitely important. Post show is really important, especially for first show, so yeah, feel free to hit me up. Okay. Depression and anxiety in building. Anxiety in building, in bodybuilding. Have you dealt with it? How common is it? Have you dealt with it? What compounds to use or avoid? What to do if feeling down? Man, isn't that common and everywhere though? I think it could even manifest a little bit more in bodybuilding because you have this constant standard that you're trying to meet and progress and be better and so on and so there's a lot of pressure in bodybuilding, I think, people put on themselves, right? So I think that could be part of it. How common is it, man? I think it's very common, but I think it's just common in general. I just think that, yeah, like I said, there's certain things that I mentioned kind of would potentially make it manifest and make it worse in some situations. And then of course messing with your hormones and getting low body fat or doing things that are extreme, like even just like pushing yourself on off season, eating a lot and all that stuff, man. Like there's not a lot of homeostasis in bodybuilding. It's you try to, right? But you're always trying to do one thing or another, really. It's not just a lot of maintaining. Have I dealt with it? Oh yeah, like I have tons of past. Dude, I dealt with depression. I mean, from a young age, they put me on medication when I was like 8 years old. I've told this story a lot. Currently do not take anything. But I even go through bouts now. I just try to separate my emotion from what's going on and try to make good decisions and try to work work through scenarios and think about things and not just react emotionally and what have you. It's hard. I mean, a lot of the coping skills are going to be the same. I think a lot of the general coping skills with anxiety, like, reducing your negative connotations with things, reducing your automatic negative responses to things. So better perception. Perceived stress is huge. I literally just did a post about this the other day. It's perceived stress is massive. Also like trying to remember why you bodybuild, trying to not compare yourself to other people, all that stuff, right? Yeah, you're going to get compared on stage, but you got to remember everyone's at different places. Like, don't, and realize that you're not always going to be linear, progressing in a linear fashion and all this stuff. So there's just a lot to think about. Compounds, anything, Nandrolone and 19 Nors, probably the ones that you don't really want to mess with. EQ for some people, right? As well. So those are probably the ones. So Nandrolone, Tren, EQ. Those are probably the ones that really might mess with people the most. And then, like, maybe something that would lend towards some aggression, like Halo, but I don't think a lot of people use that on a regular basis. It's kind of like a short use thing, but those three probably would be the main ones. What to do if feeling down, man? Like I said, evaluate. Evaluate, why are you feeling down? Is it something that a scenario that you've created in your head? Is it your perception of something is skewed? Is it maybe something going on in your body, like chemically? If you can honestly go through and eliminate all the other things, then maybe there is something that's causing you to feel down, right? What I like to do with a lot of people, like I said, is when we talk about that perceived stress, is change perception and mindset and outlook on a lot of things, and that takes time. I like to, send self-help articles or just little things like that will help you respond better to situations and view things differently. Because I always kind of use this comparison. I'm sure people have heard me say it. You take two people, put them in the same situation. Why is one happy and one is unhappy? It's because one's perception is different than the other. You know what I mean? So, like, why are you depressed? Do you really have a reason to be depressed? Has anything changed? What triggered it? There's just a lot. Sit down and write it down, like write it out and read it. It's nothing wrong with doing that stuff. So definitely lots of experience here. Always been very interested in psychology. Took quite a few classes on it in college and stuff. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think that, like I said, I think that this environment just really breeds it even worse. Can't always be up. And I think also, like, don't freak out if you're down a little bit sometimes. I think it's perfectly natural for it to happen. You can't be happy all the time. Like, there would never be happy if you didn't know sad type of thing. You know what I mean? So, it's not always a bad thing to have little bits, as long as it's not like crazy, like suicidal depression where you really need to evaluate and get help. Little bits here and there can shed some new perspective and help you evolve and help you form new skills to approach things later. All right. What is the best advice you would give an old 36-year-old bodybuilder? I guess that's old. With plans to compete again in a few years in order to maximize the remainder of his off-season. I know this is vague, but I've been training for 16 years and would consider myself just barely in the advanced realm. Well, that's not a bad thing, though, because that means you have more room to, more tools. One thing I think about is trying to maximize every possible, every possible variable that you can without driving yourself crazy and without creating some crazy OCD neurotic thing where you're just creating stress. But think about the different thing. Think about the different portions of what you're doing. So think about all the recovery variables. So we're maximizing your sleep. We're maximizing your physical and emotional stress, meaning perceived stress, but also recovery within training. Finding the amount of training that you can recover from and still progress with. Training, same thing. Don't just do more. Figure out what works. Do it better. So on and so forth. Don't be afraid to rest. If you're advanced or getting close to advanced, you know how to train hard, right? You know how to generate intensity. You know how to generate, you know how to probably train with a good amount of load, right? You know how to do these things. So you don't really have a lot of room for more junk volume and stuff that's not productive. Think about what's going to give you the most bang for your buck within your training. Supplementation. Think about synergy. Don't just, always talk about, don't just put the square peg into the round hole. Think about synergy, maximizing other avenues versus just trying to hammer one, right? You know what I mean? Nickel and dime, little things here and there. Do those things very well, and man, you'll make progress. You'll make progress. Write it down. You know what I mean? Write down the little things that you need to improve on. Man, there's so many. There's so many little things. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people don't see as well. I hope, it's a vague question, but I think there might be a little bit of help there, hopefully. All right, last one. How long can a competitor stay on in here on, I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry about that. I think there might be some typos. Might have to add that one to the next one. I'm not exactly sure what it's asking, but okay, guys, that is it. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you guys next time.